We are here today with Unite the Union International Desk Director and co-chair of the Freedom for Ocalan campaign, Simon Dubbins, and Miss Elif, co-chair of UK Kurdish People's Assembly, Elif Sarican. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having us, Erem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Simon, I would like to start with you. A new campaign has been launched. So can we get some information about the campaign? How many unions involved? What is your targets? What is your planning? We would like to hear all the information from you.
Yeah, well, the UK Trade Union Freedom for Ocalan campaign was established in 2016. We now have, it was initially founded by 2 or 3 unions. We have grown substantially now so that 15 of the UK's largest trade unions are in membership. Our confederation, the TUC, officially fully supports the campaign, and in fact last year had a very major action at its conference, where there is no doubt we have now a lot of branches of those unions and regions affiliated to it as well. So I think in the last 4 years, it's grown substantially and is very much now one of the trade union movement's major international solidarity campaigns.
Thank you. It's been already 4 years. The campaign is running. Did you reach your targets during this period? What were you aiming at the beginning, and which point did you reach already? How effective can you say the campaign has been?
Well, look, I mean, to be perfectly frank, we haven't reached our goal because Mr. Ocalan is still in isolation on Imrali Island. So, of course, there's still a lot of work to do. But in terms of the campaign itself here in the UK, I think we, without doubt, have reached some of our targets. We have many more affiliates now than we had before. The Trade Union Confederation officially supports us. As I mentioned a moment ago, we have many branches and regions that are affiliated. We have also held fringe meetings and large events at the TUC, the Labour Party, every year. In the last couple of years, 2 of the Labour movement's biggest festivals officially designated their international solidarity theme to be the Freedom for Ocalan campaign, and that has without doubt brought the message and brought awareness to thousands and thousands of people and activists that wouldn't have heard that before. So we are very clear that we're going from strength to strength. The online rally that we had in July, obviously the situation much more difficult with COVID now, but we had a fantastic online rally that reached thousands and thousands through the live transmission of it via other methods as well. So a lot of work to do, long way to go, but without doubt we've reached some of our targets and are looking to build on that.
Thank you. Dear Elif, Turkey is on headlines again with arresting elected HDP politicians. How do you comment on the attitude of European countries and international institutions on Turkey's illegal arrests? And what is your message to Turkish state?
I mean, I think we can say very clearly and with certainty that the arrests of elected HDP officials, but also HDP members and many activists who carry out, peace work and women's services and youth services and so on have been arrested en masse. You know, this is not a new thing for the Turkish government. It's not a new thing for the Turkish state. It's also not a phenomena of just an Erdogan government. It is an experience, particularly of Kurdish people in the last century, quite unfortunately. And it always has been that these attempts, these oppressions and suppressions are a violation of the Turkish state's own constitutional law. It's usually a violation of its own laws, and therefore for European states and for European institutions who supposedly champion the rule of law and democracy and expression, the freedom of expression, particularly institutions that their entire purpose is based on this, their silence is telling within itself. And I think it's important to understand the position of Turkey that Turkey plays for particularly European states, but for the entire world. And often we see human rights, we see the freedom of expression, we see democracy in parts of the world, especially like that in Turkey, being put aside at the expense of the people and for the benefit of other geopolitical interests. And this is what we're seeing with Turkey right now as well. It is completely unlawful, but beyond it just being unlawful within the law that has been determined by this very Turkish state that was built on the oppression and suppression of the people like the Kurdish people, the Armenians, and other ethnic and religious minorities, it's simply unjust. It's unlawful. So therefore, the silence of many states is very telling, but it's also just deeply unjust when people are trying to build a self-governance, which is like based in international law, and the reaction of their very own state, which, in theory is meant to be to protect them, is quite the contrary, especially during a time like COVID, is, like I said, not just unlawful, it's unjust, but it's also a very telling attack against democracy and freedom, not just with implications for Turkey, but for the entire world.
I would like to carry on with you, dear Elif. And another question is, Mr. Öcalan is under isolation last 21 years now, and he's not allowed to meet his basic human rights. What is Turkish state's aim by isolating Mr. Abdullah Öcalan? Very briefly.
Look, I think it's important to understand the reason why Öcalan was, arrested, the way he was arrested, and why he was put in these conditions in the first place. But what we can certainly tell by this continued and very consistent and systematic isolation imposed on Mr. Öcalan, someone who, despite his conditions, has released volumes and volumes of work on, Manifesto for a Democratic Civilization, alternatives to the way we can organize ourselves, and also, guidelines for negotiations for peace. It's very clear and very it's very clear for everyone that wants to see it that the isolation of Mr. Öcalan is the silencing of peace. It's a silencing of the will of the Kurdish people, because Abdullah Öcalan represents the will of the Kurdish people and has been essentially selected and elected by millions of people who some years ago signed a petition. 10.2 million people signed a petition announcing Öcalan as their political will and also calling for his freedom, but also for other political prisoners. This isn't just about Mr. Öcalan. Abdullah Öcalan's isolation isn't just about, even though important, about an individual's isolation, but also the isolation of a political process, the isolation of a negotiation for peace and for freedom, and also therefore the continued suppression and oppression of voices all across Turkey and all across the region.
Dear Simon, the time has come. The time has come campaign has been announced last week as a global campaign. So what is your mission on this global campaign of the UK part of it? So what is your target on this year's campaign? What's the planning?
Well, look, I think it's very clear. The idea of the time has come global campaign is really to try and take this campaign for the freedom of Abdullah Öcalan and the beginnings of a new peace process, really to try and take that to another level. We have seen in many countries there have been some excellent mobilizations, and the campaign overall has without doubt grown and spread. But as we see the situation deteriorating very rapidly, not just in Turkey, but also in the wider region, whether it's Syria, Iraq, and so on, One thing is absolutely clear, that there will be no solutions, proper, negotiated, peaceful solutions that will arrive at outcomes that will be able to create a better society based on democracy, inclusiveness, tolerance, and peace. That will not happen unless Abdullah Öcalan is freed and allowed to play the part that only he and the Kurdish political movement can play within that. So this campaign, the time has come, really now is about building on that international pressure. We know from our experience in defeating the apartheid regime in South Africa, we know from our experience of building solidarity with the Palestinians that international pressure and international movements are absolutely essential to bring about change. So the whole purpose of this is to take it to that level, and we will 100% play our full role in the UK as part of that.
Dear Simon, this campaign is supported mostly by unions in UK. Is there any partnership with the European unions? Is there any plan to make them get involved in the campaign this year as well? Also, can we get your call, your message about the campaign as well?
Yeah, there are actually many individual trade unions and activists throughout Europe, and not just Europe, but further afield internationally, that have already been active for a long time in supporting the calls for the freedom of Mr. Öcalan. But we had it in July. We had colleagues from the metal workers unions, the largest ones in Spain, in France, in Italy, and also a colleague, the General Secretary of the Irish Confederation, also took part and gave pledges of support. So there is a basis there, but you are quite right to put the question, Erem, because one of the priorities now is to bring the various parts together and really to look to replicate what we've done in the UK, so that many of the national centres and the European trade union movement generally really gets on board and makes its voice heard, and also uses its political power to bring about the demand for the release and freedom of Abdullah Öcalan. As we've said many times, and Elif mentioned a moment ago, I believe, it's not just about Abdullah Öcalan personally. Of course, the violations of his human rights, his denial of access to lawyers, denial of access to his family, being held in solitary, are absolutely outrageous and have to be stopped. But what is crucial for all trade unionists, all working people to understand is that the situation in Turkey and the wider region at the moment is absolutely explosive and extremely volatile. And it is in the interests of all of us, not just the oppressed people in Turkey in the region, but everybody who wants to see a democratic, peaceful future really needs to understand that unless this happens soon, and unless something is done to stop the naked aggression, the repression, the authoritarianism of the Erdogan regime, there are going to be problems for everybody across the region and in Europe as well. So we will be making every effort to get all of our brothers and sisters in the European trade union movement, the international trade union movement, to get on board, join the campaign, pressurize their MPs, pressurize their governments. The time has come and it needs to be addressed now.
Dear Elif, could we get your message, your call for the campaign, for the time has come as well?
I would like to reiterate and second what Simon has just said. And just to add, I think it's crucial for many forces of democracy and freedom and peace all around the world, and not just in Turkey or Kurdistan or the Middle East, to understand just how crucial and how directly symbolic the freedom of Abdullah Öcalan is and how much it's tied to all of our freedom. Like we said, and I reiterate, not just because he is a very important individual, because he is, and he is the architect of the Kurdish liberation movement's paradigm on, democratic confederalism and a democratic civilization, but also because the isolation and the conditions of Mr. Abdullah Öcalan has set precedents for all across Turkey for the treatment of activists and fighters of freedom and democracy, but also all across the region and all across the world. So just lastly, I really urge our entire community to support and be more involved in the Freedom for Öcalan campaign. Tell everyone about it. Read Öcalan's work. I think this is really crucial for us to start to understand just how important Abdullah Öcalan's freedom is, and also urge other organizations, particularly other trade unions all across the world. From a UK perspective, the most important thing that can be done to support the UK trade union campaign is to also strengthen these campaigns of the sort all across Europe, but also all across the world. We are stronger together, and this has always been the case historically. So the more we do this all across the world, the stronger we will be, and the better and the quicker we will be able to achieve victory, because of course that's our ultimate aim. So I just want to say the time has come, but also the time is overdue.
Dear Elif Sarican, co-chair of UK Kurdish People's Assembly, thanks for joining us today, and Mr. Simon Dubbins, United Union International Desk Director, also the co-chair of Freedom for Öcalan campaign. Thank you as well for joining us. Thanks for your comments today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erem.
Thank you. Thanks.